Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. We're delving into some comic book history today. A few weeks back, I did a review of the Plastic Man cartoon that ran from 1979 to 1981. And it was a lot of fun. And I've read some old Plastic Man comics and reprints. It got me thinking. Taking a look at the first year of Plastic Man comics might be kind of fun. And in fact, it was, and educational as well, because what you really see over that first year, besides the character clearly becoming pretty popular, you see the development of Jack Cole as an artist and as a writer. And man, he was producing something that just nobody else was doing. Well, I don't think so. And you could see the influences he had in other mediums. Well, anyway, let's get this going and take a look at it. Plastic Man, year one in Police Comics, number 1 through 12. And I'll mention here too, Police Comics 1 through 12 also is the first 12 issues, first 12 stories of Phantom Lady. I will be doing a Phantom Lady year 1 plus later on this year. And in issue, I think 7 is when Will Eisner's The Spirit first shows up. So anyways, Police Comics, definitely worth checking out. All right, let's jump into the first issue that featured Plastic Man, Police Comics number 1 from August of 1941. So, you always got to use this milestone. It's just a few months before Pearl Harbor gets bombed and the U.S. enters World War II. And eow, it's Plastic Man. So from page 1, we already see the wonders of Jack Cole's style here. We see the arm stretching across. You can see, I don't know, that this maybe has more to do with cartooning than just pure heroic comic book art. Now, that's actually true in a lot of the stuff from this era. The movement from comic strips to comic books was not just sort of a break. And there is a cartooning quality, even to some of the early Batman stuff. But you definitely see it here. So what we get is the origin tale in which E.L. O'Brien is doused in some sort of an acid during a robbery. But he escapes. And he makes his way into the country to a monastery where the monks save his life. And he discovers that he has superpowers. He's rubbery. He's stretchy. He can move his face around, stretch his limbs. Hey, at this point in time, we all understand because we've gotten characters like Mr. Fantastic and the Elongated Man and Elasti-Girl, I believe. But this was kind of new at the time, so they have to show it off a little bit. Well, at any rate, on the very next page, we actually see him playing around with his new powers. And when you combine these powers with Cole's art style and comic writing, there's no way this was not going to become a major character in American comics, at least for a while the superhero craze was still around. Well, he goes on, of course, to capture his old gang and start his career as a crime fighter because he wants to make up for the bad deeds of the past. And that brings us to Police Comics number 2. Now you notice in both these cases, Firebrand is the guy on the cover. He also gets the first story in each book. Firebrand was clearly intended to be the star of these books. But will he remain the star? That's the question. Well, Plastic Man's second foray into crime fighting involves breaking up a dope racket. Yes, hard drugs in a kid's comic book. The 40s was a lot more hardcore than most people realize. The chief offers him a place on the force if he also turns in notorious gangster E.L. O'Brien, which of course happens to be his secret identity. Love the design here on Dopey Joe. Again, just great cartooning from Cole. The scheme that this gang has is this. Opium is being smuggled in from Canada inside corpses. Again, comic books are for kids. So Plastic Man kind of goes up, sees this, kind of rides along. He sort of plays the role of the courier. So when he arrives in the States, he makes the drop, disguises himself as an old man, and he sees the dope transferred to a woman who drives away in a chauffeur-driven car. And then the next transfer is made by the driver, who drops the dope down through a grating. So Plastic Man disguises himself as a dope fiend to enter the opium den and make the bust. But when the dealers realize he wasn't sent by Dopey Joe, they attack, and, well, it's 1941, and they happen to be Chinese, so it's not the most sensitive panels that follow. They could have been a lot worse, though. Well, at any rate, Plastic Man then heads up for Canada, and he ties up the contact who's there. And then he goes to Boston, where his target dies when the bullets that he fires at Plastic Man bounce back at him, sort of a you're rubber, or I'm rubber and you're glue bit, only much more dire. Then the woman shows up. He handles her and the chauffeur, then disguises himself as the chauffeur to get the big boss man, which he does in an amazing show of powers and an amazing show of skill and creativity from Cole. And then Plaz also ends up getting called a big freak by the chief, who then, well, begrudgingly lets him on the force because he did break up the dope ring. So at this point, Cole has really established the tone of the strip, which is comical but also heroic, the personality, the powers of the lead, and we're starting to get a supporting character in the chief developed as well. So not too bad in 2 stories. Police Comics number 3 comes out in October of 1941. And today, kids, we're going to meet Baldy Bushwhack, and he's in the pinball racket. Now, you need to understand that there was a time when pinball machines were looked at as a form of gambling, and they were illegal in some parts of the U.S. New York City, for example, and here's a photo of machines being destroyed in New York. So yes, once upon a time, there were criminal pinball rackets. Now, the key to Baldy's scheme is hidden microphones in police headquarters to warn him about raids. So the police decide to contact Plastic Man out of desperation. They don't know what to do, but he's closer to them than they think. Well, Plastic Man agrees to help, and he claims he can catch Bushwhack and his gang in an hour. And he does have some inside info to help along. So Murphy sends his guys out to beat him to the punch. We're going to beat this guy. We're going to capture these guys before he can. And then he regrets losing his Irish temper and maybe chasing Plastic Man off the force, realizing he really does need the big freak. Now remember, the police headquarters is bugged, so Baldy knows that Plastic Man is on his trail. And Plastic Man soon figures out that the cops are following him, uses his unique abilities to get rid of him. And that's kind of part of the fun of this, is watching Cole figure out new ways to use Plastic Man's powers. Well, he then heads over to Baldy's hideout, and he's caught in this trap. Have some voltage, sucker. A character like Plastic Man offers almost unlimited visual potential, and it's fun in these early issues to see Cole explore what he can do, figure out ways to do it in the comic medium. But when Baldy tries to finish Plaz off, he discovers just how rubbery he is. And these are just begging to be Bob Clampett cartoons from classic Warner Brothers. Well, anyways, they also try to run him over with a steamroller. They're not really catching on to what his power set is. Well, naturally, Plaz manages to take the thugs down, and then he lassos the bosses and makes it back to police headquarters just in the nick of time, much to Murphy's pleasure, though he doesn't want to admit it. Okay, so we got this little rivalry between Plastic Man and the Chief. Kind of reminds me of what Sledgehammer and Captain Trunk. Police Comics number 4, November 1941. And oh, we are in for it this time. This tale concerns Madame Braun's crime school for delinquent girls. As the madam puts it, I've got the toughest malls on spike heels. Any one of them can lick 2 men at one time. That didn't mean that back then. It means beat them up. Okay, Madame Braun is a real homie type. She's training women to be killers and then releasing them into Windy City. So apparently that is Plastic Man's head, a base of operations. Got to assume basically Chicago, in other words. So she's going to use them to take over the underworld of Windy City. And just look at that art. You just don't find this too much out there. I mean, here I'm talking about, say, in Batman or Superman. It gets a little bit, but not quite to this extent. This is just absolutely amazing. And as you can see, she don't get her name Madame Braun for nothing. She is one tough cookie. Well, at any rate, the girls go out and do exactly what they plan to do. Since Plastic Man poses as a gangster, he knows all about the whole scheme, what's going on, decides he better intervene before there's a slaughter, because at some point the other gangs are going to want revenge. So he goes right to the source and tries to warn Braun, but it doesn't really go too well. And you can see that Cole's art, again, is really coming along. It was a little rough in the first story. It's getting better as we go along. That's a great angle, what they're doing to him. She-Devils, it's fantastic. Well, the gang's attack on Madame Braun goes off, but not as they planned. Madame Braun gets them all. And then she goes after Plastic Man. There's some great dynamic poses in this one. Rather than fight her or take her in, because, you can't hit girls, even if they're Madame Braun, he tells her and the girls to scram. So he wins the battle, but not necessarily the war, as Madame Braun promises that she'll be back. And thus, maybe we're getting a recurring villain for Plastic Man. It's not a long, complex story here. In fact, none of them really are. I mean, some of them get weird and kooky, but not so much complex. But if you think of these things as cartoon shorts, animated cartoons that have somehow been freeze-framed onto paper, you got the idea of what Cole is doing here. Brings us to Police Comics number 5, December 1941. Look at that. Plastic Man now has the cover. And he's going to keep it for the remainder of the issues in this video, at least, and beyond, which tells you he was the breakout star of Police Comics. Poor old Firebrand wasn't quite making it. And in fact, Madame Braun is back. Superman had Lex Luthor. Batman has the Joker. Madame Braun maybe is going to be the big villain for Plastic Man. Well, Braun says there's no way they're leaving town, and she has a plan to deal with Plastic Man. And this panel makes me wonder what a John Waters Plastic Man movie might have looked like. There's a vibe there. There's definitely a vibe there. Well, these panels are also amazing. Just, it's this card, and you'd like pull this wire and it would talk. And we think about talking cards now, and I'm going, was this something Cole made up, or were there actual cards that did that? I know that you could record little records that you could send in the mail to people, because I have one that a great aunt and uncle of mine did to send to my grandmother, but never heard of this before, and I honestly don't know if it's real. But as Plastic Man is reading the card, he finds out some lady pirates are robbing a liner in the harbor, so off he goes to deal with that problem. Well, Plaz shoots himself out over the water and is greeted by a shot in the face when he gets to the boat. Apparently, this can knock him unconscious, even though it can't seriously hurt him. The ladies then use his unconscious rubber body to fling grenades at the police. I gotta say, DC did the comical Shazam movie, right? I think they missed a trick. They really should have done a Plastic Man movie. Even though he's goofy, he could have at some point been part of the Justice League. They have made him part of it, I think, in some of the newer comics. But can you imagine? Now, obviously, if this is the 90s, Jim Carrey is your go-to for Plastic Man. He obviously played The Mask, which is similar in style in a lot of ways to this guy. But even then, you could have found somebody. But I think that would have been maybe a funnier, because, Captain Marvel was not designed as a funny character per se. Some of them are a little goofy, but still. Well, anyways, having captured Plastic Man, Madame Braun announces they're going to mold his face to look like E.L. O'Brien, his secret identity, but they don't know this. They just want to make him look like a crook Get ready, boys and girls. And then turn him loose under the influence of marijuana to get him in trouble with the law. So, sorry, Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. Plaz got there first. I have actually seen some other Golden Age comics involving hard drugs and rings and having to stop them and all that stuff. They weren't as obviously pro drugs as the Freak Brothers were. But, Plaz manages to come to his right mind under fire, decides to play along, even though he has no idea at this point why he is walking around as E.L. O'Brien. And while on the lam, though, he runs into Madame Braun again, or I should say Madame Braun runs over him. Plastic Man escapes, changes back into his fighting togs, and then goes on the search, finding the women by the docks. There's a joke there, but I won't make it. He doesn't realize initially that they're escaping right under his nose. I mean, they're actually under the dock, getting into a boat and escaping, but girls flee in a speedboat. Plaz snatches Madame Braun off the boat and finally gives her what for, with devastating results. Wow. So in this issue, we get Reefer and we get a death, an accidental death. So yeah, Batman had a couple of those in his first year. Plastic Man has one as well. Like I said, man, Golden Age comics are often kind of a mind-blowing experience for folks who don't know what they're in for. Old-time radio as well. They're really worth getting into. If all you know about the past is maybe a couple documentaries or you've seen some old movies or whatever, there's a lot more going on back then than you might think. You might want to check them out. All right, Police Comics number 6. We're halfway through that first year. We're in January of 1942. This one actually opens up with Plaz thanking the readers for all the swell letters they've been sending. He then gets a phone call. There's been a murder. He has to go. So he's kind of like breaking the fourth wall. It's amazing that a kid's comic in the 1940s, again, and one with a definite foundation of humor, could still have a murder victim writing a message in his own blood. Kids back in the 40s were, I'm like telling you, they're hardcore. The victim is the night watchman of a bank, and the bank is short 50 grand. Plaz notices a mark, like something dragged, leading away from the crime scene, and he decides to follow it because the police aren't interested. The trail leads under a door to a cellar, and through a keyhole, Plastic Man learns what the murdered man meant by those hands. And boy, does the Addams Family have a lot to answer for. Plastic Man is starting to build this collection of weird villains. And if you watch that review I did of the old Plastic Man cartoon, you'll know they did the same thing. A lot of credit to those guys. They did a pretty good job of capturing at least the heart and soul of Plastic Man. They may not have had the money to do the animation that, like say a Bob Clampett could have done back in the 40s, but they at least got the heart right. And so Disembodied Hands are one hell of a villain. Well, Plastic Man goes on the attack, but the big boss traps him in this adhesive mesh and drops him into a dungeon. And here he meets the owner of the Stealing Hands, who tells him how it all came to be. You might want to sit down for this one if you're not sitting down already. The man used to be a good citizen, but he had an Indian prince arrested when he tried to swindle him. The Indian placed a curse on his hands to steal whenever they could. He couldn't stop himself. Eventually wound up in Chubby Rankin's mob, and finally chopped his own hands off when he couldn't stand being a thief any longer. Whew. I'm telling you what, again, I mean, there probably are other comics as weird as this from this era. I just haven't read them yet, but this one, like this goes well beyond anything you're going to get from Batman and Superman. I can at least say that much. Well, at any rate, Plastic Man decides to help. He stretches back up through the trapdoor and tangles everyone up in the mesh. So Chubby is arrested, but the hands have minds of their own. They go off and rob a safe and shoot another night watchman in the process. Plastic Man tracks him down, gets into this very odd fight. And this is an important point about the comic medium. Lots of comics have action, but how do they depict that action? Plastic Man fight scenes are different from, say, the stuff you'd get in Batman or Captain America. The tone and the style of the book should be reflected throughout the work. Everything, including the fight scenes. So there's a certain amount of weird comedy to these, and that makes good sense. Well, in the end, Plastic Man manages to throw the evil hands into a furnace, ending their reign of terror. Absolutely amazing. Police Comics number 7, February of 1942. And dig this doozy. Plastic Man versus the United Crooks of America. So Congress, maybe? We begin with E.L. O'Brien robbing a fur store as a way to get in with the aforementioned United Crooks of America. He takes the first to Slug, the president of the club. And again, look at that. Look at that art. Look at that design. It's freaking amazing. Eel is going to have to wait for a vote from the members before he can officially join. Well, Plaz has a clash with his boss on the police force, who gets even angrier when he finds out he's been tracking down the United Crooks of America, but won't let him in on the details, won't let him in on what he's already found out. Well, Eel does manage to get into the club, and he gets the customary hazing from the boys. And again, the energy in Cole's art is absolutely amazing. There's times when it's a little rough still, but man, it's got this vitality that I think Jack Kirby is, right off the bat, is the other guy I can think of. Will Eisner. But when you look at the early Will Eisner spirit stuff that shows up in Police Comics, and I think that would have been this issue, in fact, you can see that he's inspired by Cole. It's kind of obvious, and just, in fact, if you look through the whole issue at this point, a lot of the other comics you could see are starting to look a little bit like what Cole was doing in Plastic Man. You can tell maybe the word went out. We want more of this. We need more of this. And they were all trying to deliver. Well, Eel and 2 others are delegated for a jewel theft that night. Eel is the getaway driver, which makes it possible for him to surprise the crooks as Plastic Man, because, they're up there and he's down in the car. So he takes one guy out and then drags him along, chasing the other. Well, the crooks splash Plaz with acid to escape, but getting in the car, they find that Plaz is actually there first, with Eel, a dummy, unconscious in the seat next to him. He pretends to throw Eel to his death to convince the other crooks to divulge the location of their hideout. Batman has nothing on this guy. Well, the plan works. He gets in, but gets doused with phosphorescent paint. The lights are turned off, so he's an easy target for all the crooks. How creative is that? Plaz turns the table when he gets the spray gun and uses it on the wall. So now the crooks are going to stand out. And that guy's face there reminds me of the classic Mad Magazine. And I think Cole had a real, I think he did some work with him too, but I think he had an influence on those guys too. Well, he follows up by throwing a guy out the window, knowing the police are there to catch him in a net. He's no murderer, Plastic Man. In the end, Plastic Man breaks up the gang and everyone goes to jail, where they don't want to be reminded by Slim that he warned them. E.L. O'Brien was a jinx and they shouldn't let him in the club. Shut up! Good stuff. Good stuff. Police Comics number 8, March of 1942. Great splash page in this issue. I mean, look, just look at that. And look at all the stuff going on. Good Lord. It's warning us of the destructive power of the 8-ball. The 8-ball is an engine of destruction controlled by that freak down there in the corner. We get to see a number of shots of the 8-ball destroying its targets all over America. And the freak that I mentioned before is Professor McSneer, who apparently is also working with Bob Hope's evil twin there. Kind of looks a little like Hope. Anyways, Plastic Man finally catches up to the 8-ball. With some effort, gets inside. He then makes himself look like a snake. That is a great sequence of panels there as he does that, and slithers into the control room. We get a nice little schematic. I always love that in old comic books, of the 8-ball, how it works. And we see McSneer get the better of Plaz with quick drying cement. Well, Plaz manages to escape through a hole in the foot, subdues the crooks, and at the last second, stops the 8-ball from crushing Kansas City. It's a very simple story in this one. It's really all about the action and the caricatures. The downside is we didn't get cartoons. I mean, God, this belongs animated. I just feel like we were cheated on that. Police Comics number 9, May of 1942. Big shift in this issue. Plastic Man is now the opening story in the magazine, replacing Firebrand in this position. So even though Plaz had taken over the cover, Firebrand still was the first story in every issue. Not anymore. Now we are into World War II, and we're going to get a wartime comic as Plaz takes on the Japanese. So watch out. I'm gonna be careful on this one so I don't get in trouble with YouTube. But we do get an amazing opening from the narration and the weird face to the villain, Hairy Arms, to the reaction of his men discovering he's going to work for the Axis powers. So long, you rat, I quit. Not brooking any disobedience, Hairy Arms liquidates his men with a death trap, a floor rigged to burn people alive. But one thug escapes and informs E.L. O'Brien. Burning people, I'm telling you what, man, these things. In his Plastic Man identity, O'Brien asks a passing cop if he knows Hairy Arms. He does. But they're interrupted when a weird passing car swoops by and swallows up a pedestrian. And again, look at the action, look at the motion in this. I think any comic book artist could learn a lot from Jack Cole. Maybe not Da Vinci, but I guess he wasn't really a comic book artist. But just, even if you're not doing something comical, it's the sense of motion, it's the posing, it's the creativity, the angles. Anyone who wants to be a comic book artist should take some time and read some Golden Age stuff from Cole, Plastic Man being obviously the best thing you could look at. So it turns out to be a robot car, and Plaz rides it to Hairy Arms' hideout. But Hairy Arms is wise, and he dumps Plastic Man beneath a bridge. Plaz goes back to square one and discovers that the mother of the kid who was snatched wants him in on the case. Again, look at the quality of the cartooning here. And Cole is just improving with each issue. I mean, like before our eyes. It's an amazing learning curve. I mean, look at the cop. Look at the way he's walking. Look at the folds in the pants and the clothes, etc. Absolutely incredible. I mean, sometimes Plaz is the least best drawn character in these comics. There are side characters who are even better, but you want weird. So this poor woman has been directed to leave 50 grand in the cemetery in an old oak tree, but she's partially paralyzed and can't go. So Plaz is going to take her place. And by that I mean he's going to disguise himself as this woman. So when Plaz puts the money in the oak, he's sucked down into this tube, down into the earth, where he finally gets to meet Hairy Arms. And again, Plastic Man has a rogues gallery that might almost put Dick Tracy to shame. For sheer weirdness, I don't know if anybody's got a weirder group of I mean, look at this. This is fantastic. Well, the cop that has been working with him, his name is Plots, he follows. And the two soon find themselves in a death trap that the cop stops with 1,000,000-to-1 shot. So there you go. It gets weirder, though. Hairy Arms is running a robot factory under the earth, snatching people from the streets to use as slave labor. A fight breaks out, and then Hairy Arms tries to drown Plaz and Plots by filling the room with water. Plaz saves himself and Plots using, of course, his unique powers, and this allows the two of them to momentarily catch Hairy Arms, stopping him from ordering a robot invasion. But the slippery devil escapes. But are you ready for a twist? Are you ready for a twist? Here it comes. Mrs. Resnick, the kidnapped boy's mother, was Hairy Arms all along. They order him to call off the robots, but nothing doing so. Plaz, as E.L. O'Brien, leads the city's gangsters against the robots, and the gangsters are victorious. And I'm telling you right now, Cole's art went up a full notch in this issue. And now that he's the lead, they get a little more room to tell the story, and that room is not wasted at all. This has just got to be one of the most imaginative comic strips of the day. Police Comics number 10 from July of 1942. And it looks like we're getting again into World War II in this one. So be prepared. Right off the bat, check out this art on Omar McGooch of Western Union chasing down Sadie the Snatch. Unbelievable stuff. Omar's vigil is interrupted by Plastic Man chasing down a car full of goons. He asks Omar to call the cops and send some men down to Pier 8. Omar is bummed that he's not going to be the hero and catch Sadie. I think she's like a pickpocket or something like that. But then he realizes Plaz is in trouble. The only thing he can remember is Pier 8. So instead of calling the cops, he decides to run right down there and lend assistance. And by the way, Jack Cole's future in good girl art is a bit apparent in this panel, but also just what an amazing composition. I mean, you got him running, you got the legs in front. I mean, it's good stuff. And by the way, there's a little sample of his good girl art that you're going to get later on. Well, when Omar finally reaches the pier, he discovers that the bad guys have managed to drive themselves into the water. Turns out they're saboteurs who have stolen America's new secret weapon, which they're planning on using to destroy the Panama Canal. And perhaps they're not drowned after all, because this car drives underwater. And just check out this gorgeous panel of these crooks. And look at the caricature there. That is fantastic. And this is not like you get one of these in each Plastic Man store. You get multiple stuff this good. Well, the crooks are on the boat heading to Panama, and Plastic Man follows. So does Omar. When he gets tangled in a rope, and as he hangs upside down, he spots the saboteurs in their cabin. Not that he realizes that they're saboteurs. When the crooks try to beat some info out of Omar, because they're worried that he's seen them, Plaz intervenes and catches one of the bad guys. And again, just look at the art here and the movement and the fights. I mean, look at his head going to the foreground like that. Looks like Omar got kicked in the butt at some point. This is what I mean by him being like this static animated cartoon. I mean, your brain can supply the animation almost. And I mean, just look at like the effects there of, he's moving around the crook, and then you see the crook's eyes look like they're spinning. You see the two like pupils in each eye. I mean, it's just the image of that face. It's just fantastic. Well, Cyclop, the gang leader, gets the drop on Omar, but Omar slips and accidentally takes the guy out. And I tell you what, some of the stuff, I think Don Martin might have been heavily inspired by Cole. So Plastic Man needs to get to the bottom of things. So he dons a disguise, makes himself look like frankly, like a hottie, and to get some info out of the ship's captain. Look at him popping out of the dress. Unbelievable. So as a result of all this, the ship is heading for shore in the worst way. So Cyclops and his men take the opportunity to escape in the secret weapon. But ultimately, Plaz catches them. The main thing here is to look at the way, again, the art is improving, dynamic, cartoony, wonderful caricature. And I'm telling you what, I'm showing you a tiny, tiny bit of this stuff. It's amazing panels through the entire book. You've got to look at these things if you get the opportunity. Police Comics number 11, September of 1942. And we get another incredible splash page in this one. I mean, Cole is really feeling his oats. He's got this. And so he's really pushing himself and stretching himself. No pun intended. And just again, compare this to like the art in the very first one, which, wasn't bad, but it wasn't this. And we get this amazing opening. In old London, a scientist named Smythe creates a creature. The creature goes berserk, kills Smythe's body, but for some weird reason, his brain survives. Plastic Man is not really a comic book for kids. It just wasn't. I don't think there were few kids out there who could really appreciate what they were getting. The grotesqueries, it's sarcastic, sometimes gory. You get good girl art here and there. It's really incredible. It's like, I don't know, it's like EC Comics before there was EC Comics. Well, this all leads to Smythe's brain being buried alive. He goes insane. and decides if he ever escapes, he's going to kill every person alive. But wait, we're not done yet. A man named Tad Wilkins sets off for England to join the RAF and fight the Ratsies. When his airfield is bombed, he loses the top of his head, and his brain apparently falls out. I love I'll call the ambulance. I mean, that's what you do when you find a brain laying on the ground. But we notice the headstone of Cyrus Smythe nearby, and we can assume that, in fact, that isn't Wilkins' brain that they picked up. Well, Wilkins is rushed to the hospital, and miraculously, the brain is attached to his body. Cyrus Smythe lives. That's a tough name to say, but Cyrus Smythe. Well, Tad/Cyrus returns home and tries to adjust to modern New York and a new family and a new fiance that he didn't know he had. The fact that he rejects her suggests that he truly is insane. Cyrus gets back to work on eradicating all humanity. And it gets a little, I mean, again, is this really for kids? He attacks Tad's mother, throws some liquid in her face. What did he throw? So Plastic Man is brought in to handle the situation because some crazy crap is happening. You see that trail of destruction that he left? Notice the people crushed in the giant handprints? Holy moly. Well, when Plaz runs into the villain of the piece, he is a giant, and he's walking on his hands. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. Well, Plastic Man chases him to this, like it's a river or lake or something, and the villain falls in and disappears. But Smythe emerges later and hooks up with a local gangster. Plaz overhears this and decides to pop in as E.L. O'Brien. Well, during this meeting, Cyrus once again rejects modern vulgar women, including his fiancée, Shirley. But when he again meets her, she seems to have turned over a new leaf. He immediately proposes, and they run off to get married. But it's really a cunning trap set up by Plastic Man. Drops him into that trap door there. You notice he was normal size at the time. Plaz was pretending to be the Reverend. But the trap is a spectacular failure. He grows giant again, swallows Plastic Man. Plastic Man starts punching his innards, so Cyrus swallows a massive amount of water to try to drown him. In return, Plastic Man expands and cuts off his air supply, seemingly killing him. Well, this causes Cyrus to shrink back down. He is buried then next to Tad's parents, so yes, he did kill those poor people, but his brain still lives. I mean, this is freaking wild. I mean, this is wild what Cole is coming up with here. At this point, he's got the freedom and he's laying into it 100%. Or let's go into Police Comics number 12, October of 1942. This will be the last one we look at. This will round out the first full year of Plastic Man comics. And boy, do we get another really amazing splash page. The line work is amazing. The caricature of it is just incredible. You just don't find anything like it. Our story begins with lovely model Rita Johns, who it turns out is bald and being blackmailed over that fact if she wants this to remain a secret between the two of those people there, her and her blackmailer. At which point, Rita's dog chimes in. Wait, the dog? Yes, it's Plastic Man in disguise. He takes the crook down, but Rita still won't press charges to avoid the secret coming out. She tells Plaz that, well, he just has no idea what it's like being a freak. She's talking to a guy with Dalmatian spots who was just imitating. He has no idea what it's like being a freak. Well, the blackmailer goes back to his spiritual advisor and an astrologist. And he's ready to slug him because his predictions about Plaz are always wrong. The astrologist advises the blackmailer that he cannot help him until Plaz is no more. So, the word soon gets around, putting Plastic Man in the sights of every killer in the city. I mean, look at that. Even on the police headquarters, wanted, Plastic Man. Was it maybe a $10,000 reward? Yeah, $10,000 reward. But just look at the composition there. It is absolutely fantastic. Well, those killers waste no time, giving Cole an excellent opportunity for comic action. Rita Johns is distraught, thinking that this is all her fault, which kind of is. Well, Plastic Man tries to escape the killers in the shape of a crook, but when he shows up at Louie's, the astrologist gets wise, and Plaz is trapped. So Louie heads off to threaten Rita with Plastic Man's death if she doesn't pay up. But on his way back, he is observed, which leads to the police nabbing him. Look at that scene of them carrying him off and screaming. Again, very Mad Magazine. This dude, I mean, like I said, I'm pretty sure Cole was involved with, at least with early Mad, maybe more than that. But you just see that it's unbelievable. But who was the bald old man who told them where Louie was hiding? Yes, it was Rita Johns in disguise. This leads to Louie spilling the beans on her baldness in jail. But when Rita shows up at the jail and Louie gives her hair a tug, no dice. Why? Plastic Man hooked her up with a scalp specialist. The evil blackmailer is ultimately ruined by a scalp specialist. Okay, so it's a weird one to go out on, but then again, that's kind of the point, right? They're all weird. And they're not really about the plots. The plot is like a comedic device. It's not even necessarily about the characterizations. Again, that's for comedy, but it is that comedy. It's that cartoony action. And this one shows just how much Jack Cole has developed along those lines in 12 issues with this character. So what are you getting with Plastic Man? And by the way, this continues on. It's not just the first year. That's one thing. The first year of Batman is pretty different from the second year of Batman. Superman gets some changes as well as he goes along. Plastic Man is kind of like, he's the same from issue 1 on, really. Just wild cartoon action. What a fun strip, though, to read. And again, talk about comics, especially the Golden Age being for kids, they can be a little rough, but this stuff is like, Plastic Man has got to be more meant for adults than it is for kids anyway. So if you're a grown-ass person, you might want to check out Plastic Man. They're just amazing. Again, the art, they're funny. I can't say enough for these things. I really enjoyed reading them. And they gave me some insights into that character as well. I don't know that anybody's ever done that character as well as Cole did. So I highly recommend you check out Plastic Man. This first year is amazing, and it just keeps on getting awesome. We didn't even get the introduction of Woozy Winks in this one, who would become his sort of sidekick at a certain point. So there was more development left to go, but you just see how Cole's developing his storytelling, developing the caricatures, developing the comedy, the art. It's a fast rise too. It's a really fast rise. Well worth reading. Let me know what you think in the comments about old Plastic Man. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel, maybe share with a friend. That would be very cool. Do a lot of comic book stuff on this channel, but not only comic book stuff. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there, and I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.